Good evening. I'd like to call the Monday, September 28th meeting of the Planning Commission to order. If everybody would please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Tonight's agenda consists of the consent agenda, a public hearing for the amendments to the Unified Development Code, and other business and adjournments. So with that said, I would entertain a motion for the consent agenda. Commissioner Billups?
Move to approve.
Do I have a second from Commissioner Banks? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And Mr. Hawley is going to, I'm getting ahead of myself. I have to open the public hearing. So I will open the public hearing and call for exhibits.
Thank you. The city has 4 exhibits. Exhibit 1 is the memorandum with attachments. Exhibit 2 is Exhibit A, which includes the changes to be made, and Chapter 410 to be adopted, which is at your place, for a total of 15 pages. Exhibit 3, Affidavit of Publication in the Blue Springs Examiner on September 12, 2015. And Exhibit 4, the application for the amendments. Those are the exhibits from the city.
Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Hawley, would you like to make the staff presentation?
Thank you. Appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. Members of the Commission, before you tonight is the addition of Chapter 410, Violations and Enforcements, and a couple of other amendment items to the Unified Development Code, the amended Unified Development Code, that are really cleanup items. So to begin with, Chapter 410, which is Violations and Enforcement, you have a copy before you. Was inadvertently omitted from the code. When the consultant provided us with the final document of the code documents, there were no changes made to this section from our previous code or from the existing code today, and so it was inadvertently omitted from the code. We do have other provisions within the code that address violations, but nothing as extensive as this, and this is needed then to clean those things up. So that is what Chapter 410 is about. Chapter 401, or Section 401.050, which is the transitional provisions, mentions Chapter 409 when it discusses violations and enforcement or penalties and enforcement. That reference should be to Chapter 410. That is the chapter that addresses penalties and enforcement for violations. Moving from that, and if you have any questions along the way, definitely don't hesitate to stop and we can answer those questions. But if there are none on the violations and enforcement portion, we'll move on to the daycare limited and daycare general. The state law requires that if more than 4 unrelated children are in a daycare center, that they have to be licensed by the state. And currently, our code, both the existing and the amended, has the provision for up to 6 unrelated persons. I'm just going to try to explain this in lay terms. Basically, what we're saying here is that the state requires licensing at more than 4. Our code right now, either way, the state requires the same licensing. But in order to be consistent with the state, and in order for us to track that daycare use providers are being consistent with the state, we typically set our conditional use permit requirement at the same level as the state requirement. And that's why we are reducing that 6 to 4, so that the two coincide, so that if you have to get a state license, you also need to get a conditional use permit. It does not change really the definitions of what the two are, other than reducing daycare limited from 6 to 4. Okay. Moving on again, and this one is a little more tricky because we're getting into this building, the building types. and frontage types. With the original amended UDC, in the non-residential building types, it provides for what is called a minimum building line, minimum front building line. And it has a percentage provided for something other than an activity street and a percentage for an activity street. The purpose of that ordinance, the purpose of putting that in, was actually to address development similar to a downtown development where the building is moved up to the street and the front of that building is something that you want to see occupy a certain percent of that street frontage in order for the visibility and the continuation of business along that street frontage. Having said that, what we have found is with these percentages in the building type, it really was restrictive. And as a matter of fact, for a lot of redevelopment along Highway 7, it just plain doesn't work. It was included, for instance, with pad site buildings, and if you look at Exhibit A, I think you will see where on a pad site, oops, hold on, let me get back to Exhibit A. Oops, there we go. I'll put pad sites in. On page 3 of 11, I'm sorry, of Exhibit A, provides that minimum front building line for a pad site, and it would require 40% minimum front building line for a pad site. And oftentimes with pad sites, because the depth of the lot is less than the width of the lot, or is greater than the width of the lot, it requires them to orient the building parallel to that depth line, so to speak. So you end up with a narrower building front and a longer building, what might be called side, but really that would be the front of their building, the way that they look at it and the way that their front door is oriented. So that was one area, one specific example I can give you of a building type that just simply this building line doesn't work for. So in looking at it, what we discovered really was that this provision, this building line provision, really should go with the frontage type, and I've provided the frontage types as well. What you will find for frontage is that with the enhanced streetscape frontage, the building line makes sense because that's the type of building that you might see in either a downtown or an activity center type development where you really want those building fronts up on the street and you want them to occupy a lot of the street frontage so that there is that visibility, so that the activity within the store is somewhat visible, and it just makes it look like you have that kind of a downtown commercial feel, I guess. So what we're proposing then is to move that building line, front building line, from the building type to the enhanced streetscape frontage. It would not be included in the other streetscape frontages that are provided in Exhibit A, that being the frontage plaza or the courtyard, all of which we found to be problematic, the terrace or the yard setback, and finally the buffer edge. It would not be included in any of those. It would only be in the enhanced streetscape frontage, which is the frontage that really goes with a downtown development typology, so to speak. And then, along with that, within both the existing and amended code, there is a definition of what building line is. And that definition is included in the staff report as an imaginary line running parallel to a lot line that is the same distance from the lot line as the closest portion of the building on the site, when you're just reading that, it's sometimes hard to visualize, but that, in essence, is a building setback. That's what a building line is, as defined in our code right now. It's the setback from the property line to the face of the building. In the case of the percent front building line, what the consultant was trying to get to was the length of the face of the building along a frontage. And so we're recommending that language be changed so that under the enhanced streetscape, what you will have is these minimum front face of building rather than building line. And we're doing that because we're concerned that people are going to get confused. And by definition, a building line really is the same as is similar to a setback. It really talks about the distance between the property line and the front of the building rather than the width of a building along a frontage. So we're proposing that change as well. And with that, those are all cleanup, and I will stand for any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Hawley? Doesn't look like there are any.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I would ask if there's any witnesses that would like to speak in favor. Seeing none, I would ask if there was anybody that would like to speak in opposition. Seeing none, I would bring it back up here to the commissioners for questions and discussion on the record.
Mr. Chairman, I just have one question.
Yes, Commissioner Duhan.
When you were talking about the daycare and you were talking about dropping it from 6 to 4 on the limit.
Is your mic on, Commissioner Duhan?
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
It is now.
Thank
Sorry.
you.
Okay, and talking about the daycare, when you were talking about the limited, you talked about it dropping from 6 to 4, but what we've got here also shows the general dropping from 7 to 5.
Yeah, that's because the general daycare, we have the general dropping from 7 to 5?
That's what it shows, yes.
Oh, that's correct. Yeah, that's the correct. It drops from 7 to 5 because the general is where the conditional use permit is required.
Okay.
With the limited, you do not need a conditional use permit, and you can just go forward. Similar to then with the state, you won't need a state permit, and you won't need a conditional use permit if you're doing 4 or less unrelated persons.
Okay.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, seeing no other comments or questions, I will close the public hearing for amendments to the Unified Development Code UDCT-09-15-4985. And I would entertain any motions for a recommendation of approval. Yes, Commissioner Billups.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to recommend approval of the amendments to the UDCT 09-15-4985 as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Duhan. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh, this was supposed to be a roll call vote.
Yep.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
We got to do roll call vote.
Okay. Commissioner Peel.
Aye.
Commissioner Billups.
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace. Aye. Commissioner Duhan.
Aye.
Commissioner Haney.
Aye.
Commissioner Banks.
Aye.
Chairman Graham.
Aye.
Okay.
Motion carries. Sorry about that. Now you
That's
even
okay.
asked. We will send that recommendation for approval to the City Council. That brings us to other business on the agenda. Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Chairman Graham. Again, tomorrow morning is our next developers workshop. We'll be talking about a lot of things we've spoke of here previously, essentially training on the comprehensive plan and UDC. I know a few of you have registered, so we'll certainly are open to last-minute RSVPs in the affirmative, so let Karen know before you leave here tonight if you are interested in attending tomorrow at the CJC training facility. 7:30 is breakfast, 8 o'clock program, should be done by noon. Also, just clarification, confirmation, we are moving our Eastern Jackson County Planning Commissioners training from tomorrow night Again, that was originally the save the date to November 30th. So that's confirmed now?
Yes, that is confirmed. and I hope you all got a revised save the date. There will be another one coming out when we have confirmed the location of where that will be held, but November 30th is the date that it will be.
All right, thank you. Any other business to bring forward? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion. Our next meeting is Monday, October 12th.
Yes.
Do we have agenda items as of yet?
Yes.
We do. Okay. So, yes?
Adams Point Adams Point Village, hopefully. And what was the, I do not know what, I can't remember what the other ones are.
But we will have a meeting on the 12th.
There are items, yes. Okay. Sorry.
All right. Now, seeing no other business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved by Commissioner Wallace. Do I have a second? Commissioner Duhan, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.